This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for a regular session meeting of the Easthampton School Committee, our first for the year 2025. We are going to roll call in. Ben
Harsey here.
Eric.
Eric Guy here.
Megan Harvey here. Laura Scott present.
Sam Hunter here.
Great. We are going to begin this evening with announcements and start with correspondence.
I don't have any correspondence to report.
I do have a note for our members to remind all of us electeds that we are required, even if you didn't fundraise or spend any money, that you are required to file your year-end campaign finance reports with the city clerk imminently.
Imminently.
Done.
Okay.
Gifts?
I have a gift. Well, I have a gift to report.
I don't have any, Megan?
I don't have any, so
Sam, go ahead.
I just wanted to report that right before the holidays, we received another box of free COVID tests for the Mountain View School this time. This was also from Comics and More Bookshop downtown, and I hear there's another one coming. Good. And I just have to arrange a time to pick it up and deliver it. So
I can pick it up.
Our Maureen will pick it up and deliver it.
Great.
So thank you very much to Comics and More for that.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
We don't need to vote to accept it, do we?
No.
Okay, cool.
Public comment. If there is anyone joining us in person or remotely, if you want to raise your virtual hand to signal that you would like to share something, we'll leave that open for about a minute just to see if anyone expresses interest in sharing their thoughts this evening. Okay. All right. Seeing no one from the public interested in speaking this evening, we're going to close public speak and move on to the superintendent update.
So tonight we wanted to really talk about what competency determination is. I have a couple of slides if you want to put the slides up.
Me?
Put up the slides?
Sure, yeah. Okay. Do I have them?
Yes.
Do I?
What I got a Word document.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, the Word document?
Okay.
I can share.
Okay.
You got it?
I said both of you.
Okay.
I was like looking for a slideshow.
Do we? Okay, that'd be great if you can do it because my computer has.
So people can see it.
Let's see if it will let me do that. It actually might not let me do that. Hold on.
Well, I'll start anyway.
Okay.
And
It says I'm not allowed to share my screen.
okay.
You're probably not a host.
Oh.
Neither am I. I don't know
Okay.
why.
Well, let me just explain what it is. Anyway, while
are
we're
now.
reading.
Try again, Sam.
Oh.
I'm going to do what I can, but.
Sorry.
So basically, with the law that got changed about the MCAS not being allowed as a graduation requirement, that elimination of the MCAS as a high school graduation requirement has actually caused some challenges for school districts because in the past with the MCAS being the way that it was determined whether you got your high school diploma or not, it no longer can be used as that for that reason. So I'm going to read you, directly what the law says. So, be it enacted by the people and by their authority, a law requiring that districts certify that students have mastered the skills, competencies, and knowledge of the state standards as a replacement for MCAS graduation requirement. So this is now what is there. This is section 1D of chapter 69 of the general laws, appearing in the 2022 official edition is hereby amended by striking from the first sentence of the words, as measured by the assessment instruments described in section 1, which would be the MCAS, and is now replaced with the following: by satisfactory completing coursework that has been certified by the student's district as showing mastery of the skills, competencies, and knowledge contained in the state academic standards and curriculum frameworks in the areas measured by the MCAS high school tests described in section 1, administered in 2023, and in any additional areas determined by the board. So basically what that means is that for those students that pass the MCAS, we'll talk about our grade 12, 2025 students right now because that's what we're most concerned about. Any student that passed the MCAS in English, math, and in science now just has to worry about passing the high school graduation requirements. So if they have passed the MCAS and they pass the high school graduation requirements set by the school committee of Easthampton, then they will graduate.
Okay.
Now, for those students that have not passed the MCAS requirements, we now have to do, which is a competency determination. So today we met for a little while with the high school and district leadership in the high school to talk about how are we going to prove that students actually have the competencies in order to, for us to give them their high school diploma. So you'll have two things now. One is your graduation requirements and now your competency. So the competency has to be in the areas that the test was taken in the spring of 2023. So the subjects will be, English, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, or it could be physics, biology, and environmental science. So the work that we did today is that, and we'll give this to the school committee when we're complete, for example, it will be, do they pass the class? Because the course requirements are that we meet the state guidelines. So, and it has to be in English 10, and then again, most kids will be geometry, and most kids will be biology, right? Or some kids will be physics. So if they pass the class in grade 10, then we will accept that they have met the competency determination in those three areas. If they have not passed the class, is where the challenge comes in, because then they either have to make up the class, or we have to decide how else can they show us competencies in those areas. All right, now we'll move to transfer students. So students that transfer into the district.
Oh, can I pause you
Yes.
there? So let's say, so these are three different buckets that we're talking about. We're talking
Yes.
about mathematics, ELA, and science. So in the science avenue, if let's say a student takes physics and doesn't pass, they could take biology, or vice versa. Or they could retake the class they didn't pass.
That's right.
In the math bucket, that's geometry or some other,
Algebra 2.
then ELA, can they move to, are they not already required to have passed English 10 to graduate? Like, is that not a redundant requirement?
So
we're really just looking at how we would substitute the math and science?
So they don't have to really pass English 10. They have to have 4 years of English. So they might take a creative English course their senior year. So you have to have 4 years of English. But this says you have to pass English 10.
Well, this is saying what we determine is the equivalent of what they were tested on as 10th graders from the MCAS. Okay.
So it has to be 10th grade standards. So they have to be able to pass 10th grade standards. So we talked about today. So let's say, for example, you have a student that passed 9th grade English, failed 10th grade English, passed 11th grade English. They have to pass that 10th grade. They have to be able to show that they were able to pass whatever those guidelines were for 10th grade English.
Right.
So that's that's kind of the tricky part about if they didn't pass. So they could use the retest results that happened prior to the date when the MCAS no longer can be used for graduation.
Say that one more time.
They can use the retest results. So in the fall, we gave retests
for the MCAS.
For the MCAS, and we don't have those results yet, but we should be getting them. If they passed prior to when the law was agreed upon, changed, we can use those results.
Okay.
So, all right, now, the other part of it is the John and Abigail Adams scholarships. All right, they can take the February retest, not for competency determination, because that test will have occurred after the law was changed, so they cannot do that for their competency determination, but they can do that if they want to apply for the Kopnick Scholarship or the John and Abigail Adams. So the MCAS can still be used for scholarship purposes.
But you're saying that part of that law, and I didn't understand this at the time, part of that law is not saying we aren't required to use it as a graduation requirement. It is saying we explicitly cannot use it as a graduation requirement, as a metric.
Well, we can decide
We
that
can-
we want to use the
we
MCAS
could
as a
set that
graduation
As an
requirement.
option?
Yeah.
Or can we do it student by student for these situations you laid out?
No, we could
So it
set,
has to be a district-wide.
Yes.
Everybody takes it
Yeah.
and it can qualify,
Yeah.
or nobody is allowed that opportunity, even if the example they
But,
can't pass.
well, I guess we
English
could
10.
find that out.
We can't say
That doesn't
that
seem-
comparable, like if we say it's not a requirement, but if you do not pass English 10, but you do pass MCAS, that can be
Yeah, I don't
Could be either or.
understand why that would be an
Interchangeable?
option.
Could be an
You
either
can
or.
decide that.
Or the district
Yeah.
could, in
That
theory,
could
we are empowered to create our own exam, kind of, that would
You can do that too.
attest to this. So that might be a better avenue.
So for the kids that don't pass, which is a small number, by the way.
Right.
There are no, when we looked today, there were zero
Right.
yeah.
2025
Better to
graduates.
forecast the
That
problem
had
and
not
address it
passed.
after the fact.
Sure.
However, there were more than 11 current 11th graders that did not pass.
Yeah. Okay.
So for those 11th graders, they may have passed English 10. And if they did, then they don't have to take the MCAS, or if they passed the math. So what we have to do now is go back and look at, for those kids that did not pass,
We need a little menu of options in those three areas that meet the standards for grade 10.
Yes.
In those three areas.
so, which also brings us to the special ed students.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Oh, Megan has a question.
Oh, yes.
So we've been talking about this in terms of like they do or do not have to have it, but the test will still be given
Yes.
during the school day to everybody. They sit down, they
To
take it.
10th graders.
To 10th graders. And we're just talking about, so everyone will take it as we always have done?
Yes.
Okay, it's just whether or not that's going to count. as,
Everybody
like,
will take
graduation.
it.
It's,
It can be used
it's,
for scholarships, it
Yeah.
can be used for other,
Scholarships
yeah.
and for
Probably
your
looks good on your
accountability,
resume.
Right, and a
Still.
district metric.
so that everybody has to take it.
Yep.
It's a
And
district.
now
one.
it will be
Okay.
used for your school accountability for our
Okay.
state, because the federal government states that there
Okay.
has to be one test that the whole state takes.
Yeah.
And so it is the MCAS right now. So, you know, the challenge for all of us is going to be, you also get appraised on how many students take the test, and everybody tries to go for 100% or 99%.
yeah.
Now that the test does not have that significance for high school students, for graduation, you know, everybody is kind of worried about what's going to happen, because a participation rate is part of your accountability. So we'll wait and see.
But you can't
have
opt
a-
out of 10th grade, that counts.
You can now,
That's
in
it.
theory.
Right, you couldn't before, but now you can.
It won't
You would be
affect you.
sacrificing your
I
ability
mean,
to
if you don't
graduate.
come to school for those
Right, of
days,
course.
Right.
But then you would have to pass 10th grade.
English.
Right. Okay.
I
you
have a
have to do
question.
that anyway, because one is graduation requirements, the other now is
They've been
competency.
divorced from one another already, is what we're saying.
So it's the competency determination where the MCAS was that. It is no longer that. We cannot use that unless the
Unless we
district
decide it's
decides
not.
to
Pass a
say they want to
policy.
do that.
Can I just have a question. In the past, before the ballot initiative, what would happen if somebody did not pass the 10th grade MCAS?
They would have to take the retest.
So they would take the retest, do they take it in 10th grade, or do they take it in 11th grade?
They continue to take it. They could take it in
So they
12th
continue to take it until they pass?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or, after you took it so many times, you could apply what they call for EPP.
EPP.
Which, right, where they would, you know, you've taken it, you haven't passed it so many times, then it's like a portfolio
Yeah.
submittance, and then you have to show that the kid did have the knowledge in each of the areas, and it went to the state, and they reviewed like a portfolio.
Yeah.
Similar to what they do for the
alts.
For the alts.
Yeah.
And they would decide whether that student did show that. That's a huge process.
Yeah. So, okay.
So there are no more waivers.
And what we're trying to solve now is we have a small number of students who didn't pass the MCAS in 10th grade,
Yes.
and we need to we need to determine competency.
Yes, and we're going to try
Okay.
to do it by looking at their classes. So if
Okay.
they pass their classes, then the school committee would say yes.
I just don't want the public to get confused, like we're not trying to make the MCAS a graduation requirement. Like, I just want to be clear about the problem that we're
Because I think
solving.
when people want it, voted against it.
Yes, no, we were one of the communities that voted the most against it, so.
When you say that we have met, will you just let us know who is meeting and discussing the competency requirements?
Oh, yeah, so it's right now, Nick went, Julianne, myself, a special ed department head, Sue Wilson, the vice principal, and the principal.
Okay.
And now the next step is we're going to be meeting with guidance.
Okay, great.
Because, guidance, obviously, you might have to reschedule some kids to take some classes again, depending upon where they're at.
Thank you.
So it's just important that people know, because the state can no longer by law certify competency, that now we have to think of another way of doing it. And just in those classes, English, math, and science. And it has to be according to the standards of the 2023 MCAS. And so there is a form that came out, and that's the form that I put right there so everybody can see it. We're going to put it on the district website. Those are the questions that were put out by DESE. Like, how does the new law impact students in the class of 2025? And it explains, they have to show mastery of common core skills, competency, and knowledge. And the district has to certify that. So the state will not be certifying any competencies. And then how can the district locate? That's just for the district. How do we know what the status is for all our students? There's what they call Edwin Analytics. It's a secure portal. Superintendents can go into it. Also, principals have access, and you could see on the CD roster who still needs to pass the MCAS. Students still able to establish local graduation requirements? Yes, this does not change. This just adds the CD requirements. School districts allowed to use their student scores on high school MCAS tests as part of their local graduation requirements, is what you were asking, apart from the competency. And it says, yes, the establishment of a local graduation requirement is at the sole discretion of school districts. But that's apart from a competency determination. And then again, we talked about this, which MCAS high school tests were offered in 23. So English language arts is for English, for math, science, there were 4 options: biology, introductory physics, chemistry, or technology and engineering. Can students in the class of 2025 earn a CD by attaining the required score on a spring 2025 MCAS administration, which would be the retest or the regular? And the answer is no. Because students beginning the 24-25 school year without the competency determination may earn it through the November 24 retest or an appeal, but students may not earn the CD through these processes once the new law took effect. So the appeal would have had to have been written also prior to the date. So there are a list of questions there. What are the requirements for districts in developing a process? So basically, usually it comes from the schools get together, they decide, because it's about scheduling and looking at the data, and then they will come up with a document and they will submit it to the school committee. Will DESE be providing a list of courses that meet the new language of the law? No. Usually it's not up to them to list the courses. So that would be up to the district. Districts are required to accommodate former students. This is a very important one. If there are former students listening, is that if you are a former student and you did not graduate because you did not pass the MCAS, you can contact the school, and we have to get a plan in place so that you'll be able to earn your competency determination. So, is
there a date attached to that?
There isn't.
So just want to make sure everybody's very clear about that. If anybody's listening, if you have a former student in your family, or if you were a former student who did not get your diploma because you did not pass the MCAS, but you did pass your other courses, definitely re-engage with the district.
That's right.
And there's no date limit,
Right.
so.
That's right. If you had been considering, do I want to just do a GED, but that feels somehow unsatisfactory to you, there may be another option.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and does this include, maybe you're getting to this, students with disabilities? who stayed until 22, got a certificate of completion, did not pass the MCAS.
So what would happen with them is that their courses probably did not meet the standards.
Did not meet the
They didn't meet the
standards.
standards
Okay.
of the 10th grade English, math, and science.
Interesting. So if you fall into that category, reach out to me, because I want to figure this out.
I can have a question. Yes.
What was my question? Oh, do we have a list of people who have not met the requirement, so who didn't get a diploma, that we could reach out?
to them? That's a great question.
Yes, every
Let's do
school
that.
has a list of those
So
students
can we
that
do
did not
that? Just
graduate.
send, get a form letter,
Yeah,
send it out?
I would really
Okay,
like to-
great. What are the odds that they're watching this meeting?
Exactly.
Extremely low.
Somebody might know somebody,
Yeah.
though, that's
Let's do
watching
all
the
of the
meeting,
things.
right?
That's
All
Yeah.
the things.
Yeah.
Diploma is so
Great question,
important.
Megan.
But it's a good question. I think also about the special ed part is that, so one of the things today that we talked about is the renaming of classes, because a lot of inclusion students might have support classes that are not really named the same way, like English.
English 1, English
It might-
2, yeah.
Exactly. So they need to be renamed so that those students, if they pass those classes, are eligible for that high school diploma.
Because really, and just to make sure everybody's clear about where this comes from legally, if you require modifications to the curriculum due to your disability, you are still entitled to complete school and receive a diploma. And in the past, they've not been able to do that because they weren't able to pass the MCAS. So.
And of course, it does not apply to all students because
No.
it's a different situation.
The alt's a different thing, but
Yeah.
so it's an interesting thing. So if you think you know of a student who falls, or former student who falls into that category, we definitely want to engage with you and help you figure it out.
I have one other question. I noticed that the science had 4 categories, and I know that our chemistry wouldn't, most of our kids wouldn't be able to access that till they either pass through bio or physics to get to chemistry. But that technology and engineering piece is interesting to me. Could we dig a little bit and find out? I know we have some coursework in that at the high school. I know there's talk of trying to expand science programming there, but I'm wondering if there's a course that's maybe part way to kind of satisfying that we don't think of in that way. If that might be a really useful third tier. Biology and physics are both very intricate and specific, and I can see there being the likelihood of a child who is otherwise satisfied everything else but gets kind of tripped up in that arena, but like maybe tech and engineering would be,
It's a hard one. The tech, we used to,
the standards are much higher?
yeah.
Still, I'm not saying they're
It's a
higher
course.
or lower.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's a different
Yeah, it's a
kind
different
of learning and
course.
understanding
Yeah.
that I can see there being a population of students who could be
Take that.
successful in that where.
It's actually a course. It's like you take the course.
I understand. I'm saying, I wonder if we have something that's already very similar or partway there, if we could,
Yeah.
for the next
Look at
year or two,
that.
kind of look at that and maybe offer that third
That's an idea too, yeah.
science option. Anyway,
Let's see. So will high school students be required to take MCAS 25 beyond? Yes. As I explained, that DESI's accountability system will continue to use assessment participation rates, which we just talked about, that being a challenge, and the resulting achievement and growth data in its annual determinations made through the district and the school accountability system. So underperforming schools, or schools that are in need of intervention, as they call them now, will still be assigned to schools that, on the basis of what their scores are on the MCAS. And then are students still required to provide a free, appropriate public education, FAPE, for students with disabilities? And yes, has not changed any of the FAPE requirements. And there's a connection on this, where you can read the advisory about special ed that came out in 2018. Will DESI continue to offer MCAS retest opportunities for high school students? So they're offering, no students are required to take the retest in spring. They do have the opportunity to do that, but that again is so that you can have opportunities for the scholarships, to still apply for the scholarships. Will DESI continue to adjudicate appeals that have been submitted to DESI? So they will adjudicate all performance appeals received by the effective date of the new law. So as of right now, if there's any appeals that go in, they will not be adjudicating those. And then we already talked about the John Abigail Adams Scholarship Program, the Stanley Koblick Certificate, also the Seal of Biliteracy. So the Seal of Biliteracy says that you have to get a proficient in the English part or advanced in the English part of the MCAS, and then you also have to pass the biliteracy test. So they're still going to use that so that you can get the seal of biliteracy. So you can take the, the result of the test would be that. This said that the law took effect on December 5th. So anything that happened after there was the new law. And then they talk about the English language arts and math scheduled for November. This came out, right? This actually just came out, but they're talking about November 2024. So we haven't got the results yet. That's the one that students took in English language art and math for the retest. Those scores will count for the competency determination. Do high school students still need to earn a competency determination in order to graduate? Yes, you have to prove that you have learned the standards. And then what is the impact of the law on students who have previously earned a CD before the date? So obviously, if you already earned your CD, then you're all set, you're ready, just gonna do the graduation requirements. Let's see, and is that the same question? Let me see. What is the impact of the law? Oh yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah.
They have the same thing twice. So that is it. That's it's kind of a little confusing when you first hear about it, but then it makes sense.
Right.
So graduation requirements, and how do you prove that you're competent in English, math, and science based on 10th grade test from 2023.
Right.
It's simple when you think about it. That you just have to remember that there's two things now.
Right.
Because the MCAS is no longer there for the state to certify, so now we have to take over the role.
Right.
Okay.
And so your team is working on this, and we'll bring it to the committee.
So we hope to bring it to, we're hoping to get it done for the next school committee meeting, if not the one after that.
And then is that something that the committee would vote on
Yeah,
to
but they're
approve?
approved,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
So
and would there, hopefully, when it gets presented to us, could we build in time for the public to hear? Does it make sense to have sort of like public speak or a public
Sure,
hearing
they could.
around so we can sort of get feedback on how folks are feeling?
Yeah, we'll schedule it that way. Anything new like that, we prefer not to vote on the same night it's introduced.
that's fine.
So, yeah.
Okay, great.
We don't have any seniors as of what we looked at today that this would affect, so
Right.
we're really thinking about what are we going to do for the juniors. But that would be important because they're going to be scheduling their classes in the spring. We want to make sure the classes they take help them to meet
Right.
competency determination if they didn't.
That's right.
All right?
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is that all?
Any other questions?
That's really helpful.
No, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Shall we, do you think Jesus, I see, has joined us?
Oh, good.
Yes.
Do you want to switch gears? The public that might be following along with the agenda, under announcements, item D was the presentation by Jesus Leyva regarding the resolution to support Mass Promise to Invest. And Jesus is joining us now, just got out of the meeting. Good evening, Jesus. You can unmute yourself.
I think you can unmute yourself.
You can.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Sam,
you.
I'm going to turn the chair over to you just to
Sure.
kind of open the discussion, and I believe you might even have a presentation to share, screen share with us.
I think we'll be pretty brief.
Okay, great.
I think we're good. So Jesus approached me, actually, a community member connected the two of us a couple of months ago with this Mass Promise to Invest. And I'll have Jesus give us an overview, and then we can talk about it.
Great.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to consider this resolution. I prepared a very brief statement that I'd like to read from just to keep it sort of concise.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
So, and just to explain, Mass Promise to Invest is a small grassroots advocacy group of Western Mass residents who are concerned with how the school funding works at the state level, and more specifically, the municipal cost impact of charter school and school choice on low and moderate income districts. But Easthampton is not unique in its struggle with municipal funding. for the Easthampton School District, and Easthampton joins over 200 Commonwealth school districts in being minimum aid districts, and many more as declining enrollment public school districts in general. Easthampton, like many other districts, did not receive a substantial increase from the Student Opportunity Act. While a number of school districts received a 5%, 10%, or even 20% increase over Chapter 70 funding for 1 or more years of implementation of the Student Opportunity Act, Easthampton received a combined 8.4% increase over the 5 years of current implementation of the Student Opportunity Act. This is not sufficient to even account for inflation over those 5 years. This burden in underfunded state aid relative to increase in costs, even when factoring for declining enrollment, is made worse by the cumulative effect of charter school choice assessments on the Easthampton Public School District. Can you still hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That, if you hear that ding dong, that's just somebody joining the meeting remotely. You can plow right through it, it's fine.
Okay. We believe the total net assessment amount for Easthampton of $1.86 million is reflective of the undercalculated need in school funding by the state's Chapter 70 funding formula. The 2.83 million amount, or this 1.86 million amount is the 2.83 million amount after factoring receipts from school choice receiving and current charter school reimbursement. So 1.86 million is sort of the remainder of what Easthampton is responsible for in assessments against its Chapter 70 funding. Tonight, we're hoping Easthampton School Committee will join Northampton, Amherst, Pelham Regional, South Hadley, and Greenfield school committees, as well as the Northampton City Council, in advocating to seek immediate funding relief from the Commonwealth for legislative policies whose financial impact on school districts across the state is asymmetrical and falls disproportionately on districts with the least means and or the most needs. I'd like to thank the Easthampton School Committee for considering supporting this resolution. And while a resolution might feel insufficient in legislative power to make a difference, I can assure you that endorsements and resolutions passed so far in support of this advocacy have created political capital to bring this issue to the forefront of the attention of several local and non-local state legislators and education funding advocates. We must also remember that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees is empowered by school committees, and when you pass a resolution and notify MASC of its passage, you are telling them what you want them to prioritize in school funding advocacy. There are countless reasons why we make this specific advocacy request and funding, which cannot all be enumerated here, but we would welcome questions you might have about this advocacy, about the funding, and why Easthampton's support on this resolution is important. Thank you.
If I may.
Yeah.
We've spoken on the record. First of all, beautifully stated, Jesus, thank you very much. We're on the record as not being common supporters of resolutions. And I want to clarify my position on that, and you may want to speak to it as well. I think they lose potency. I think their potency is tied directly to their frequency of use, first of all. So I think you keep your powder dry, so to speak, so that when you take an action such as this, it has the highest impact that you can hope that it has. I also think that a resolution that is just, let's say, a statement of values or an identification of a problem leaves the public wondering, then what, or so what? So I think the most valuable resolutions not only communicate your values and identify a problem, but they also prescribe a solution, which I think is what sets this apart and draws my interest and support.
And one of the things that I've really appreciated about working on this with Jesus and with the other folks who've been working on this is that this is something that came out of kind of a couple of school districts, and now it's sort of a more of a regional thing. And I know that Jesus has been working to identify supporters in other parts of the state as well. There's definitely state reps that are interested in paying attention to this, and I noticed there seems to just kind of be a difference in the way that this is getting talked about. about
I agree.
in a way that makes me hopeful. I think we've all kind of, I think it's kind of dawning on everybody that the idea that like school enrollment, is tied, like per pupil funding tied to school enrollment, means that our school district, our enrollment numbers are going to go up when our services improve, and our services are going to improve because we're competing in an open marketplace with, other school districts and charter schools. It turns out like public education, particularly when people are having fewer children, like doesn't really work that way. So I think it's been really exciting and kind of invigorating to be like, okay, how do we get this message across? And so what we did was I took the one that Amherst Pelham passed. I've looked at all of the resolutions that have passed. I looked at Amherst Pelham as kind of a model, and then I changed it to be a little more reflective of Easthampton, I think. But it's just kind of laying out what the concerns are, and then just asking our legislators to do something about it, essentially, leaving that like pretty open to interpretation. We're sending it, we're asking to send it to our state representatives, Homar Gomez and John Vallis, and our state representative, Aaron Saunders, as well as, and then our Senator Joe Comerford. And wait, that's not our senator. Who's our senator?
Comerford is not. So
Comerford is not.
No,
I apologize.
Well, we're right on the cusp. So Northampton has a different, like Omar and John Vilas. But then you have. I
put him in there. I put the same chair in there twice. This is why we go through it.
Yeah. So McGovern and Comerford would cover like.
McGovern. That's it. So anyway, I'm going to strike that out and put McGovern in there. Sorry, McGovern. And then also sending it out to the Easthampton City Council and the Mass Association of School Committees. And I think it's just like a good opportunity for us to kind of join with some other districts in sort of saying out loud what the problem is. And I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Anybody else have questions?
Go ahead. No, you go first.
Sure. I don't think Aaron Saunders is related to us either.
No.
Just
FYI.
He's a friend of mine. He's a good guy.
Shout out to Aaron Saunders.
Preaching to the choir, but I just have to say thank you for doing this work. It's incredibly needed. And one of the things that really bothers me about this situation that we've sort of found ourselves in as a state is the amount of inequity that it creates for kids. So in Easthampton, we have been advocating incredibly hard, not that other districts are not, but we also have a city council and a mayor who are working with us to maintain positions and keep services for kids. And that's not true in every district.
Right.
And that is happening because these shortfalls are, unless someone puts in 14% extra to a budget, you have to cut something. So wholeheartedly, I sign on, and thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I just commend the precision on how you just addressed us with that information. It was very easy to understand, I think, with this recording for people to listen to, and just looking over what your goals are, it makes complete sense. We would look into that, and I don't think anyone knowledgeable or unknowledgeable would shake their head in shock if we said that we're underfunding districts in our state. So I think that anyone in the position where you are, where you're fighting for this type of equality of funding is commendable. So thank you for bringing this to our attention for sure.
Baltimore?
So one of the thoughts that I have on this is I always wish that there could be more relief for, I always wish there could be more relief for special ed funding. Because you have to reach a certain threshold in order to get some relief from the state on that. And also, for us, the homeless transportation is also a very, is adding up.
Yeah.
So that it's a 50-50 split now, but I always think that maybe the state could give some relief on those two areas also, because those are the areas, so you can have a decrease in student population, but that does not address the increase in needs.
Right.
So, I don't know, there's a lot I know you already have in this proposal, and I appreciate that you did that. I do also think about those other things that are being huge costs for us here. And it's very difficult to meet those needs when it is, Chapter 70 based on your enrollment. And also, if you get an increase in enrollment during a year, there's no more money that year. You have to wait till October 1st to come around. So I think that the formula itself, I know the Chapter 70 formula itself is, very difficult to understand and very complicated, but, I do appreciate what you're asking for. And, I wish that there were those additional things that we could also add to that, or at least have conversation about.
Hey, Susie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say two things. First, I wanted to clarify that it's my understanding that Representative Gomez and Senator Vilas are the legislators for Easthampton.
That's correct.
In the state legislature, in terms of the state legislature. Right. But to address the idea around special education and special education expenses, that's actually one of the places where our group first looked at. Senator Oliveira.
Yep, Oliveira.
Had filed bills in the last legislative session to try to increase both the threshold for special education expenses as well as the reimbursement amount.
Right.
What we found that is if you break down the claims per capita by district, that unfortunately some of the wealthiest and largest districts in the state are the ones that have the highest claims per capita, and that's because those districts have a better ability to advocate for IEPs for their students, both through their parents and through the districts themselves. And so without actually, until we actually study the special education expenses and how they work, I think at this point, if we attempt to support increases in special education expenses through the existing channels, that unfortunately, in terms of equity, we're going to be funneling more amount of money to the wealthier districts as a result of those kinds of proposals. And so that's one of the reasons why we have focused on the sending tuition assessments, because we believe that students that are being lost by districts through school choice and charter school is a very clear indicator of a need for funding for low and moderate income districts. It basically demonstrates very clearly that these districts that are not able to spend a large amount of money above foundation budget, which many wealthy districts do, are losing students to school choice and charter schools. And Easthampton happens to be one of those districts that does not fund a lot more above foundation budget as so many districts do. Many wealthy districts are able to afford to fund 20 or even 30% over foundation budget, and clearly Easthampton is not that wealthy.
Thank you.
Nick, do you have any interest in speaking to this? I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have. No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Saying no, but getting up.
Our Director of Business Services is here tonight with us as well, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you're willing to share.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all, Jesus, thank you for your work on this. I mean, I'm certainly an advocate for relooking at the Chapter 70 formula and how state aid is distributed to districts. I think years back when the Student Opportunity Act was being thought of, the goal was to have it be more equitably distributed, but there's been some shortcomings as that's, gone to fruition. I would say particularly in the special education area, as our superintendent just brought up, I mean, at the risk of boring everybody with the ins and outs of the Chapter 70 formula, the Student Opportunity Act, it's not just based on your foundation enrollment. There's also parts of your population they look at, such as special ed students, English learners, low-income students. And, they come up with formulas based on your numbers there to kind of, give more aid in that direction. In my opinion, I think the one big shortfall is out-of-district tuition students, because they don't actually count the number of students you've tuitioned out to other places. That they give you like a flat percentage based on your foundation enrollment, which is far lower than, we have. So, we don't make up for that in state aid as some wealthier districts, as Jesus mentioned, might. So, I certainly thank you for that work. I always would advocate for more funding, and I emailed Sam back yesterday regarding this. I'm not sure if you read it or not.
I sent you the email from the wrong email address, so I didn't read it yet.
Oh, okay, well, it's in there for you. I responded, I assure you. And, I put some numbers in it and, just gave you a couple of my thoughts. The school choice piece, I just, if the state were to kind of rethink the way they assess municipalities for choicing out students, I don't know what that would do to the revenue of students choicing in.
Right.
So I mean, that could be like an unintended consequence of something like this, depending on what any potential legislation looks like. And, I don't want to forget that, because districts do rely on that revenue. Unfortunately, a lot of districts lose more students to choicing out than to choicing in, for various reasons. And, some are certainly more susceptible to charter schools as well, including Easthampton, because we have a charter school within our city borders, which about between 70 and 75 students attend every year from here. So that definitely is, it hurts the school budget big time. So I totally agree with Chair Scott in terms of resolutions and their use. And I think that they should only be used, A, if they're solutions focused, and B, with discretion, because they do lose their meaning if they occur all the time. But, this is certainly one I would support, just, because the state funding formula should be looked at. I mean, the SOA had good intent. I have no doubt in my mind. I was actually just in the process of getting my business manager certification when that was coming out, and I was going to, MASBO meetings and learning about it as it was happening. And and I didn't know a ton about school funding back then, but, it seemed exciting. I mean, everybody there was excited about it and the impact it would have on their districts. And then the pandemic hit, which kind of obviously threw, wrenches and everything. The other piece the formula doesn't capture necessarily, I mean, they look at the number of special ed students you have, but, there's a lot of students that have needs that don't end up in that bucket either. I mean, just the social emotional needs that are out there now since the pandemic happened. And, it might not necessarily qualify somebody, as having a disability, but it doesn't mean that there's not support that students need due to, trauma and whatnot, depression, loneliness, things that happened during the pandemic. So that doesn't get captured in there either. I mean, so I think that the bottom line, the needs we're seeing now, it does not match the increase in state aid that's occurred over the last few years.
Yeah. I want to highlight thank you for that, Nick. I want to highlight one other point too. In my view, Easthampton and many others like it sit almost as sandwich communities. So like, for example, we might bleed out some choice out to some attractive charter schools or to slightly wealthier districts, and we receive from the south of us, largely from even more economically challenged communities, we receive in a lot of students. And the other part and piece, I don't think anybody is seeking to vilify competing public schools or the idea of charter schools. I've only ever taken issue with the funding structure, and I think this highlights that. But it should be acknowledged publicly that particularly charter schools and often choice situations don't embrace accepting and sharing the burden of the needs that special ed students have. They oftentimes, and I won't speak to exactly how, but the way it shakes out is their percentages of special needs students that they service are much, much, much lower than sandwich communities such as ours. And not only does that come with a staffing cost, and it's costly on all levels, and we don't want to sacrifice what we offer our students with special needs, but we also just need to keep the lights on.
Yeah, and we are, we're one of many communities in Massachusetts that fall into that umbrella where you know, we don't bring in the revenue and the property taxes that some of your, you know, much wealthier places do. We're not rural, so we don't get rural aid. We're not regional, so we're not getting transportation reimbursement. You know, we're not low income to the extent where like 90% of your you know, school funding is Chapter 70 aid. So it's just, we kind of just ended up in a place where the structure of that formula did not benefit us that much. And we're not alone. At the Masbo Institute in 2024, that was talked about a lot during when there was a keynote speaker, and it happened to be the acting commissioner, and that was brought up by several people, you know, from communities comparable to Easthampton. So
Suburban and exurban, right?
yeah, more, yeah,
Suburban
exactly.
and exurban communities.
Yeah, and you know, it's out there. It's out there, but you know, I certainly think it helps to keep putting it out there.
Yeah, agreed. Anyone else have a comment?
Jesus got his hand up again.
Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry I missed you. Did you have something else to contribute?
Sure. I just wanted to sort of go back to what the business manager was saying about school choice. The school choice piece is really complicated, obviously, and we don't want to negatively impact those districts that benefit from school choice and are in fact relying on it for their funding as a result of students that they lose to charter schools. So the particular proposal that's before you for a resolution for endorsement only looks at underwriting net school choice assessments, and it's asking for the state to underwrite it. So this would not come out of the cost of the school choice positive communities. And we're currently focused on the charter school piece specifically in our discussions with the representatives around the filing of the bill. And we're hopefully going to try to add the school choice piece in later when we have some of those situations more understood in terms of the school choice piece.
I appreciate that. And I also just want to say it is just like really exciting to me personally, having been on the school committee about a decade ago, to hear that like the idea that we are making enough money back on school choice, it's significant. Like that's a really big deal here, and that is not the conversation that we were having when I was first on school committee.
That's
so
right.
That's just kind of an Easthampton specific thing. And I also just want to comment on, it just hasn't come up yet in this conversation, and I always like to point it out. We, in our community, we really want to have a world language program. We really want to have languages available for our students.
At the middle school
At the middle school in particular. Like that is really, really important to us. That is a strong community value of ours. And there is a Chinese immersion school down the street from us, and we can't have a world language program because of the impact
Cost to send Easthampton residents
to that Chinese immersion school. So like the fact that like our kids don't have access to languages so that we can pay for a school that does bilingual education.
Can I say too,
like so
none of us is faulting, we are not faulting the families who make that choice.
No, absolutely not.
We are examining the funding structures in place that leave people with these difficult to impossible choices to make to advocate for their own children.
Exactly.
needs.
Like you do what is the right thing for your own kid, you know? And I always like want parents to do the thing that like, if your child needs something different, you should be able to go and get that different thing. It just shouldn't be such a disaster.
At the detriment of another community
the rest
of children.
Us. Yeah, exactly. And you know, like, and speaking as someone, my child did do a grade in a different district once, and like it was needed, and I'm glad I had the choice to do that. But like the impact that it has on our district in particular is really upsetting. So I'm excited that it seems like we're kind of moving in a direction in the state generally where we're all kind of coming around to this idea that it's not working, which is also exciting because that is not what I remember 10 years ago. We were not kind of all there yet.
So two things. First of all, I want to compliment Jesus. I think your delivery is pitch perfect.
Yep.
You didn't ask for this, but I think you'll make an excellent ambassador. You are not. We tend to get very emotional and histrionic when we talk about things like that. You have a really lovely manner and just a beautiful way of articulating the issue that I think Eric referenced this, that is really digestible for people to understand even if they don't have a lot of expertise. So I appreciate that. Secondly, I would just like a kind of casual straw poll show of hands to see if everyone feels comfortable voting on this tonight, or if you had adequate time to read it if we should vote on it on the 28th or if we're, so if you would raise your hand if you are comfortable voting on it tonight. And if you're not, that's not, okay. All right, so we do. So I would entertain a motion to vote.
Do you want me to read it out loud?
That would be,
Okay.
that would be the motion.
And then for the, okay, so motion to read, I guess?
No, so it would be that's
Sorry.
okay, that's okay. It would be a motion to adopt and endorse the following resolution,
Okay.
and then you'll read
And then
the
I'll read
text
it.
of the resolution.
Okay, so a motion to adopt and endorse the following resolution. Easthampton School Committee resolution calling for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to underwrite charter school tuition and school choice. Whereas $1.86 million is the amount for school choice and charter schools that was deducted from the Easthampton Public School District state aid in the fiscal year 2025. Whereas this resolution addresses school funding inequity in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and its effect on Easthampton Public Schools, it joins similar petitions in other affected communities in the Commonwealth. Whereas this resolution is to ask the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to change the ways that charter school and school choice are funded by underwriting the municipal cost of sending tuition for low-income and moderate-income cities and towns. Whereas under Massachusetts' current funding system, for each student residing in the city of Easthampton who chooses to attend a charter school, almost all of the funding from the city for that student follows them to the charter school. Whereas under Massachusetts' current funding system, for each student residing in Easthampton who chooses to attend another public school district, a smaller but significant portion of the public funding from the city for that student follows them to the chosen school district. Whereas the current funding system costs public school districts much more than it saves them by educating fewer students. Whereas when a student leaves a school, the cost to operate that school remains relatively unchanged, making it difficult to proportionally decrease expenses in response to reductions in enrollment. Whereas many of the costs associated with running a school district are fixed costs, including maintenance, utilities, transportation, student services, and benefits negotiated in good faith for public employees. Whereas this results in a downward spiral of budget cuts that perpetuates the loss of students to charter schools and wealthier school districts, and a continued decline in school funding, loss of programming, and support staff. Whereas the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is obligated by its constitution to provide a public education to all of its children, rich and poor, in every city and town. Whereas charter schools do not take on the full fiscal responsibility of free and appropriate public education of students with disabilities, and students with those needs are routinely excluded from charter schools. Whereas the current funding system siphons valuable and necessary public funding disproportionately from low-income and moderate-income school districts. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Committee of the Easthampton Public Schools, in cooperation with our municipal partners in the Easthampton City Council, calls upon the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to correct this inequity by taking long overdue financial responsibility for the charter school and school choice assessments for low-income and moderate-income school districts. We are asking the Commonwealth to increase state aid to the Easthampton Public School District by changing the funding formula for school choice tuition and charter school tuition and not deducting any funds from state aid for public schools for school choice and charter schools. Be it further resolved that the Easthampton Public School District requests our local, state, and elected and appointed officials to actively support this policy change, and be further resolved that the chair of the Easthampton Public School District or her designee shall send a copy of this resolution to state representatives Omar Gomez, John Vilas, State Senator Jim McGovern, and the Easthampton City Council President and the Mass Association of School Committees.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Yes.
Thank you, Megan. I'm a note to revise. I'm going to strike Aaron Saunders.
Yes. Don't know how he ended up on there.
And why are we sending this to Joe Comerford? She is not our representative.
No, McGovern.
Neither is
neither
McGovern.
is. Okay,
So to be
never
clear, McGovern and Joe Comerford both take care of Northampton,
Yeah.
and it's a common, we're so close that it gets
messy.
confused.
Send it to the right people, Laura.
Okay, will do.
And I did meet with Connie Denham, Councilor Denham, and she is planning on bringing the resolution to the City Council as well to
Excellent.
co-endorse it.
I'll check on a date on that. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or further discussion?
Maybe.
Seeing none, all those in favor of supporting the resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Jesus. We really appreciate this, and we'll keep you posted.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can stay right where you are, Ms. Stewart-Bernier.
Yeah, I guess
We are
that was a
ready
good segue to my,
for your finance and personnel
my
update.
last business report I'm going to give you.
Really?
Yeah, it's starting to feel real now with under 3 weeks left. I guess before I start with the doom and gloom, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the committee for everything over the years. I've always had your support. I think we've worked well together collaboratively. With the former school committee, I appreciated the opportunity, to be here and I've valued the relationships that I've made. And I think in the last 2.5 years, we've done a lot of positive work from, what I walked into in terms of the large gap between the school committee and city council approved budgets for that year. And how we solved that issue and worked through it and built relationships and, got us in a place where the last 2 budgets were pretty smooth. So I'm proud of that work, and, it couldn't have happened without the committee's support and dedication to the students of the district. So thank you all. January 31st will not be an easy day for me. It's not like, I'm running to the door, cheering, counting the minutes, it's not going to be easy to walk out of here, but, again, thank you, and on to the business report. At this point, 54.63% of our local appropriation has been either spent or is encumbered. It's important to note that some expenses currently in the general fund will be reclassified to other funding sources as the year gets closer to ending. I'm continuing to monitor the FY25 budget for areas to watch. Really, it's out-of-district tuition, special education transportation, and McKinney-Vento transportation. At this point, are areas of great concern. I met with the finance subcommittee last week and, talked about this in greater detail, and, likely during the finance committee update on the agenda, the chair of that committee will give the full committee an update on kind of where we stand, where I think you'll end up at the end of the year in terms of a deficit, and different paths the committee can choose to take to deal with that. Regarding the FY26 budget process, it's in full swing at this time. Principals and directors have given me all the necessary information needed to build the first draft of the FY26 proposed budget. I'm also looking at budgeted and actual spending totals from past years, because you want to look at the history and see if there's any areas you've under or over budgeted. A budget timeline's been developed, including meetings with the leadership team. We scheduled finance subcommittee meetings last week when we met, culminating with the public hearing in late March. That, I believe, would be March 26th, I think.
Yes.
Sounds right.
5th, 25th.
5th, excuse me. March 25th would be the public hearing. The governor's House 1 budget is due out next week on January 22nd. So at that point, we'll have an idea of what the Chapter 78 will look like, or at least might look like. I mean, oftentimes the minimum aid per pupil increases as the state budget process kind of unravels. It did this year. It often starts with $30 a student. This year it went up to $104. No idea what it'll be going into next year, or if we'll be minimum aid. I mean, my guess would be we would be, but there's no telling. I mean, 2 years ago we weren't. We had a pretty sizable Chapter 70 increase 2 years ago. So I have no idea, but next Wednesday on what I refer to as Business Manager Thanksgiving, I'll open up that file and look and see what we're looking at. Lastly, my personnel report for December, not much here. We hired one substitute teacher, and we had one reading interventionist from Mountain View separate from employment with the district. Current vacancies, we have 2 paraeducators currently open at Mountain View, a night custodian open at Mountain View, and still that lunch supervisor. I was really hoping I was going to be able to get that filled before I depart, but that's been on here for at least a year at this point. Does anybody have any questions?
If somebody's interested in one of these jobs, what's the best way to apply?
School Spring, everything, I mean, our advertise, we do advertise on the school or the district website and the Facebook, page as well, but School Spring is the best way to go. And I was told that our School Spring postings automatically end up on Indeed.
Okay.
Like, I'm not sure what the mechanism for that looks like, but I was told that happens, so.
Really functions like Zillow.
Yeah, it ends up out there, right? So, I mean, the night custodian's a relatively new vacancy. We had somebody had left right after New Year's. But there's tons of applicants in School Spring. The interviews will be taking place soon. I think there's probably over 15 folks have applied for that. So, I mean, that should be easy to fill pretty quickly.
That's great.
The lunch supervisor, as they said, we've tried.
You want to try to sell it to one of your custodian applicants?
If Larry's got a good runner-up, I can tell him to send him Jill's way.
Great. Do we want to do a roundtable?
I have a quick one. Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to say thanks.
Yeah.
Like incredible work. And it felt like you fortified the business end of this district, like with no nonsense the whole way, clarity, focus, and like an amazing approachability, like the whole time. Just like it was a really great presence in this building and around the district. So yeah, like really phenomenal work, man.
Thank you.
Best of luck in the future.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. You're the only business manager I've worked with on the school committee. So you are by far the best.
And the worst by default.
But no, you're a genuine advocate, I think, for our district having as much as it needs, but also wants, but also you've just been a complete source of reliable and realistic understanding, super grounded, and I've followed your lead as far as any financial thinking that if Nick thinks this is not going to work, it's not going to work. And look, it's very forward thinking. If we want things, yes, we want to build, but when you build something too quickly and then you look at the future and then things fall apart. So I really appreciate your just reliable sources of understanding the budget. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
This is not fair to have to do. I won't say everything I could say because I can't possibly. There's not enough words. I feel like we've been in the trenches together. I don't know of what war, but we've been in some trenches together these past couple of budgets on the finance committee, and I'm going to miss working with you.
Likewise, thank you.
I'm just not cry.
Can you go first?
Oh, me? Okay. I will absolutely miss working with you, Nick. It's been so much fun learning about public school finance from you, which, and I mean that seriously, like you obviously are really passionate about this, and you can tell, like I really look forward to hearing you explain things. I always trust the things that you say, and you're always able to, like, if I have questions or if something doesn't make intrinsic sense, which is true about a lot of public school finance, I find it very easy to ask questions and get clear answers, and I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for bringing that passion here. I think it's made a big difference in our district. It will continue to make a big difference having had you here, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything more? We went out with Nick this week. We had our Christmas celebration of our central office administrators, and we also saved time to honor Nick. We have a little joke around here. His favorite word is no. So we got him a shirt in the colors of the district and with big no and an exclamation on it, so he can take that to his new placement. But we always know that he says no, but then if you go back the next day and you say, okay, well, is there another way we might be able to work this? If it's workable, he tries to find the answer for that. And I think one of the greatest skills is that he spent time as a principal, and very rarely do you get a business director who also understands schools.
Yeah.
And how they work and what's important to teachers and, what is necessary for schools to be successful. So I think, he's a rare business manager because he comes from the school part into school business, and that gives you a totally different lens on what's important. So I've enjoyed working with him. We were speaking that he has a dry sense of humor, and so we laugh a lot here, and I think that's really important, especially with money and budget can be very stressful at times, and I has the ability, to find humor in that too. So I'm gonna miss working with him. He was my first person I met when I came here for my interview, him and Justin, and they were both new themselves. So we'll stay in contact, right?
Absolutely.
We're definitely gonna need, if our new business person applies and takes a job, she's actually asked that Nick be the mentor because she has a lot of trust for him and respect for the work. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
My first tenure on school committee, I used to cry at every other meeting, and I pride myself on I don't do that anymore. And this is a big test.
You haven't cried in a while.
I haven't cried in a long time. A nerd loves a nerd. And the sense of humor and the fashion sense and the excellent taste in dogs all speaks to the character of this person. I just have boundless affection, admiration, and gratitude. What an excellent person, so proficient in his I've learned so much, and that touchstone for Nick is students. And miss you doesn't cover it, but I'm so excited for you. You deserve every success and everything, and I wish you 1000% the best. And that's all I can do.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your kind words, and I will do as much as I can in the next 2.5 weeks and get as much of the proposed operating budget done as I can. A couple of people asked me, are you taking any time off in between? I was like, there's really no time. It's not a good time of the year.
Said no.
No, I'm not. I'm going to leave here on a Friday and start there on a Monday. And, it's going to be pretty hectic and because it'll be a learning curve for sure. But, I'll write it out, and I'll always, I'll definitely take a lot from here with me, because you learn something everywhere you are, and you learn things from the people you're around. So, I'm never going to forget this, and this will be part of my work going forward. So thanks again. I don't know if you want me to stay up here while Megan gives the Finance Committee update, because there may be questions. I don't know.
Let's do policy first. Megan needs a minute. It's okay.
All right, I'll go rest for a minute.
We've been in the trenches. In my defense, we've been in the trenches.
Okay, Sam, take at least 2 minutes to talk about
I definitely
policy
don't
and
have-
CES.
That's the worst part. We
Definitely don't have 2 minutes of an update, but, so we did have a policy meeting. We then scheduled another one, which we needed to reschedule. I'm waiting to get some feedback from the leadership team regarding the school choice application deadline policy, which is what we're working on. So we will be reconvening sometime after the end of January.
Okay.
I think beginning of February is our next meeting, so.
Okay, has CES, I'm just jumping over finance to CES.
CES met during, the last time they met was during one of the superintendent interviews, and they have not met since then.
Okay,
So.
all right.
Okay, this is going to take a sharp left turn.
Okay.
It's going to be because here comes the bad news, which you already
It
described.
fits in with the rest of the meeting.
What's that?
Sure.
School funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in with the year.
Okay. So, excuse my, I
got
can't
it.
help it.
Pull by the
There's
horns, you
leaking.
got it.
Yeah. You will be very, very sorely missed, Nick. So we met and we got an overview. We kind of touched onto 3 different budget years to kind of figure out where we've come from, wrap up fiscal year 24, which of course we've talked about several times, is in the books, the reports are all in, it's closed, all the T's have been crossed and the I's dotted. And
do you want to just
that.
lay out for the public how FY25 lines up with real life, timeline-wise?
Oh, yeah, sure. So one of the things that, we reviewed is that we are, not we, like it's our choice, but the way that school budget works is that it runs on a fiscal year. So it starts on July 1st. And so we name it for the year that it starts on July. So we are currently in fiscal year, which one are we in? 24.
5.
25.
So
the one we're going into
Right.
is how it's named. Thank you.
Where it ends.
Where it ends. Yep. And so it does sort of line up a little bit to our academic calendar, but it doesn't line up January to December.
Right.
So it spans, half a year and then the next half of the year. So we closed out our last fiscal year, or just got an update on that report and sort of how it all broke down. And doing all this work really helps us to understand where our big expenses are, helps us forecast a little bit, although there are always things that we're not quite able to predict and think about. And so in our current fiscal year, we have some ongoing issues with our budget. We already had a massive increase coming into this year, which our city funded and we are grateful for. But we are talking about something in the range of like over $1 million deficit. Potential. We have spent and or encumbered a good proportion of the fiscal year 25 budget so far. And if things don't change, then we'll need, there'll be quite a shortfall. Something on up to the order of 1.1, and I'll let Nick correct anything I'm saying that's not quite correct.
The range is about 635K to a little over $1 million. That is the anticipated, most likely deficit for FY25, which is the school year we're currently sitting in. Yes. So it's paying bills for stuff we're doing today.
And so there's sort of a lot that goes into this, and the minutes will get posted from our meeting, and it also was recorded, so it will get posted if you want to watch the entire thing and look at the documents that were in the packet. But essentially, we have some costs related to special education and sending kids out of district, some unanticipated new placements that we got, which is what we've talked about for a couple of years of why we keep money in our revolving fund and our school choice, and I'm using the wrong name for the funds, I'm sure, but we have to keep money ready to send these kids, the day they arrive in our district. And this is one of those years where we just had more than we expected, and it was unanticipated. So we have a huge amount we spent there. The special education transportation and transportation in general is costing us much more than we anticipated it would for reasons that were outside of our control, like bringing kids to other districts, that kind of stuff. And then one of the things that we talked about that has increased dramatically this year is the way that we are needing to take care of children who are in foster care and the supports we provide for them and transportation for them, and also students who are homeless. And that was a difficult conversation to be having, but we have a significant number of students in our district or who live in Easthampton who go to a different district who are homeless and of course still are
Needing to go to school.
qualify for, deserve an education. And so the districts that they sort of bound, the Easthampton and wherever else they're going or wherever they're coming from, split the cost of that transportation, but it is expensive. And the numbers, did we talk about 12?
7.
7, okay. I don't know where I got the 12 from, but more than, that number.
We had
struck
one
me as
historically and it jumped to 7. Yeah.
Just sort of struck our committee, the subcommittee as, it's just another one of those things. That's a huge increase from previous years, and we're also talking about
the most vulnerable students.
Yeah. So all to say, our Director of Business Services laid out all of this for us. We have it all sort of broken down by category, explanations. We have possible sort of solutions of ways that we can get that, because one of our choices is not to just stop sending children to other districts. That's not on the list. So we have to pay it, right? And so how much do we deplete from next year's school choice funds? Do we need to go to our city council and ask for an appropriation in order to cover this gap so that we don't spend down what we need for next year's budget? We've talked about extraordinary relief. We won't know about that for a while. So we're still in the process of figuring it out, but it does seem clear at this point that we will be asking for an appropriation from the city council to cover that gap so that we are not.
Do you want to frame a little bit the amount that we had discussed in committee? Or do you want me?
Please take it away. I don't want to. You say. And yeah.
Can I just jump in first?
Go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
Please do. Correct some things.
So, based on, what I predict, and it's early on, I mean, things can change between now and the end of June. I think 1.1 was like the ceiling, that's the worst it's going to be. And about 650-ish is the best case scenario. And the reason for that is because, there's a couple things we can look at right off the top. Because of the minimum aid per pupil increase from $30 per student to $104 that I referenced earlier, that came after our budget was passed. So that additional, there was about $121,000 in Chapter 70 aid. That went to the city, but was not factored into the city budget because that didn't actually happen until the state budget passed in July. And you recall having conversations about that before, right? So, I mean, if you can apply that, right there. We did have fewer kids attend vocational schools this year than we budgeted for, just based on history. I mean, when you do your vocational tuition budget, you got to look at what your current students are. You have to move them up a grade level. Sometimes the graduating class is somewhat large, and then the grade 9 class is not as large. And, my first 2 years here, there's quite a few 9th graders going to either Smith or C-Tech. And this year only 5 went to C-Tech. So, we do have some vocational tuition money that can be transferred to offset some of it. There's, we can apply, I would say up to about $200,000 additional in circuit breaker. Circuit breaker, just for folks who aren't familiar with it, is special education reimbursement for large scale costs. Most of the time it's for students in out-of-district placements because you have to hit a threshold amount on how much you spend on that particular student's education in order to qualify for some reimbursement.
It's like meeting a deductible.
Pretty much. Yeah. And you can get up to 75% reimbursement for the instructional services. And because of the Student Opportunity Act, they do reimburse for transportation now as well. They didn't used to, but it's never fully funded. And it was actually not funded very well at all this year. So our circuit breaker revenue for this current year is a little bit less than we thought it was going to be because the transportation came in lower. That said, we did budget circuit breaker money to go against our budget for this year. And pretend, not that this would ever happen, but pretend the budget went this year exactly as planned. No unanticipated costs, whatever. We would have ended up with about $235,000 in our circuit breaker at the end of this year, which, a lot of districts carry over a full year because you need that for emergency expenses, that these unanticipated things that Megan had referenced. Obviously, things didn't go completely according to plan, but if we apply up to 200,000 more, we'll obviously only have 35 left, but that's some money that can go against it. So, I mean, right out of the gate, you can get that down, well under $1 million. Then it's up to the committee's, purview as to how you want to tackle the rest of it. I would definitely recommend applying for extraordinary relief through circuit breaker. It's just the stuff's not out yet. We don't have any way of determining whether we'd qualify or not yet. Usually that stuff comes out in March. Last year it was earlier, but I don't know if it's going to be any earlier this year. But that would be really helpful because you have to spend that in the year. You would have to spend it this year. So, and that helped us a lot last year, getting us through. I anticipate next year's circuit breaker revenue will be pretty good. I mean, because our costs sure haven't gone down. And one thing that's important to remember is there was a second bucket last year called reserve relief to help with the 14% tuition increase. And, the reserve relief, you didn't have to spend it last year. You could have carried that over into this year, and we did carry most of it because the extraordinary relief, we spent all that. But that reserve relief came off of this year's circuit breaker reimbursement. It was kind of like getting an early gift.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like my birthday's coming up and I get a gift 2 weeks before. It doesn't mean I'm going to get an extra gift on my birthday. That's kind of, the metaphor I like to use to describe it. So when trying to calculate what we're going to get in circuit breaker reimbursement next year, I have to remember that that reserve relief was taken out of what we got this year. So, I think we'll probably get $1 million in circuit breaker for next year, which is good, obviously. You could look at our school choice account, which I'm starting to get worried about that. We do use an awful lot of it to go against the budget each year. And in this current year, we've budgeted $1.2 million. Which would leave us, with a good amount for next year, but depending on how much we have to use to go meet this year's budget shortfall, that's going to be less than you're going to be able to use to apply towards next year's budget.
Your costs will just be even higher than they were FY26 or
Yes.
Case 25.
And eventually what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to budget more than the revenue that's coming in, which for years we've been able to do. We've been in a good place.
Yeah.
And that's not true of every district. There's a lot of districts out there who barely have any. But we've been fortunate in that sense, and we've used it to get through deficits for sure.
We're also a small enough district that if we're making cuts, they hurt.
They do,
Yeah.
for sure.
Every
they
cut
do.
hurts.
Yeah.
So.
No.
No, and the toll that would take on buildings and their operability and student support and morale, there's myriad reasons why you don't want to look to do that. That's kind of my summary. Again, there are expenses that were out of our control. We've been very meticulous about purchases and whatnot for this year, and just trying to minimize it as much as we can. But I did want to get it out there on the record and be transparent. So, you know everything you need to before I leave.
Thank you.
To be clear, one last thing, I sort of said one of our options is not to just stop sending children out of district or stop transportation costs. Nick laid out all of the options, knowing that here are ones we're never going to want to use, right? So things like freezing our current budget, not filling vacancies, all the way over to reducing force and cutting. And it just, immediately our subcommittee was like, yep, the full committee would never approve, and also the subcommittee doesn't approve. So
The community certainly
the
won't
community
approve.
would not approve. That's just not.
And I wasn't advocating for that. I just have to throw everything out
We've
there.
got to go through every
Truly every
Yeah,
option.
you have to look at every option.
And the things that you put forward as our sort of solutions or our Band-Aids for this are truly the only options that are available to us that align with our values. You just something else you want to add?
The appropriation strategy. So what we discussed, we talked about that range, that 1.1 to 1.2 is the high end, worst case, down to roughly about 650 is kind of, fingers crossed. So we discussed how to approach this. Megan already laid out that the other options, the only other thing we will be kind of watching is that extraordinary relief, which certainly we will apply for if we qualify, but we have no way of knowing, and we got to move now to secure funding. So what we had discussed was requesting an appropriation, a kind of twofold appropriation. Nick already highlighted. There's this we had talked about kind of pulling that low end. So taking that $650,000 number, requesting that as an appropriation with a little tag to also request kind of a process request to reclaim that Chapter 70 balance. Do we think that's 116,000-ish?
I think it's 121-ish. I don't remember the exact figure, but.
16,920.
Yeah. So basically an appropriation in that total amount, understanding that 120-ish is just basically money that's already meant for us, is just a process request. And that 650 is plugging the down for this current school year, this current fiscal year that we find ourselves in. And so I think I would entertain a motion if somebody wants to say that, yeah, we would endorse the finance subcommittee strategy on that, which would empower us to send that appropriation request. It would first go to the mayor. We've already begun talks with our counterparts on the city council who run finance there. So I've given them the heads up, but they can only entertain an appropriation request that comes from the mayor. So the mayor will have to sign first. She had another obligation, so she's not here to speak to it tonight. But I know that her protocol, and we have a lot of respect for that, is often to kind of step aside from the financial matter. She abstains from voting on financial issues. So we have made the case here tonight, and we will make that to the mayor, and we will then hopefully go on and make that to the city council if we could get a vote tonight. Yes, Sam?
Can you just remind me of the numbers in that appropriation?
$650,000.
Okay.
Plus the additional exact amount of the Chapter 70 money that is kind of, in theory, owed to us, for lack of a better term, that would just be kind of a process request. It would just be getting all that money in one shot.
How much is that about?
It was about $120,000.
Was it 116?
I thought it was 116.
Yeah, you're right. 116.9. I heard Megan say it. That's right.
Because I have your notes in front of me.
So call it 117 because it's 116,920. So 117 is that Chapter 70 money.
Yeah.
And then 650 is the budget shortfall for FY25.
That's the low end of the budget.
It is.
Shortfall.
So what we discussed in the way we would present this would be if they it's a chunk of money to ask for. So it's, and we had a large budget increase year over year the last go round, which they accepted and honored, and we appreciate that. Unfortunately, the times are outpacing our expertise here, and it is what it is. So the strategy that we offered is a bit of like a give and a take. Mm-hmm. So we are going off of, this kind of fingers crossed best case scenario of that shortfall being toward the lower end. And also with the knowledge that they would have of two things. The first is that if for some reason we don't spend that appropriation where it was, if we can't spend that this year, that balance would be returned to the city coffers.
Right.
And
as we've done in the past.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we need more, we will have to pull from choice. So we are saying to them, we are minimizing your risk. We are both, putting our butts on the table, so to speak, in an equal measure to keep the schools whole.
And that includes already $200,000 from
already
our
spending
circuit breaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're spending $200,000. We're asking for the gap to be filled, and then
So we're already spending $200,000 from the.
You know what, Sam? Let me scan the finance summary sheet.
I'm so sorry.
No. I want to answer your questions too, but I also think for future reference, the sheets that Nick created are really useful.
My computer just died, so.
That's okay. No. You wouldn't have it. It was our policy, or it was our finance subcommittee meeting.
Yeah.
But we
I have
can
them here if there's something specific you want. It's a $200,000 from circuit breaker. We have a benefit from the Voc students that we've had a few less of than expected.
Okay.
And then the rest, the Chapter 70 that we're not asking for, it's just.
So if it holds at the
transferred over.
650, then that leaves us with about $1 million in choice, which can go in a hot second if things turn sideways. So what we're saying is we'll put that at risk if they will front us the 650. Because otherwise there's no way out of this.
Yeah.
We're cutting.
No, I trust you. I just wanted to make sure it was enough, because I don't.
It's a low, and it's a big ask, but it's on the low end of a big ask.
It is, yeah. I don't want to go through all this process and then find out it wasn't actually enough, you know?
I mean, how does everyone feel? Do we want to, we're meeting again later this month, and they're in the process of certifying. I mean, I think they have free cash, but they're certifying additional funds that we could draw from for something like this. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if we don't take this vote until later in the month. Does everyone want to chew on if 650 we think is sufficient, or if there's a?
I mean, I want to get you something that you can bring to.
I don't like going back to the well more than once either.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Anybody have a comment?
I'll get to chew personally, but I understand this.
Yeah.
Need to move.
You want to chew? That feels good to me as we're talking. What do you think, Eric?
I'm not allowed to talk about it.
So we don't care what Eric thinks.
We don't care what Eric thinks.
But for the public, Eric's wife works for the district, so he abstains from financial decision-making. Go ahead, Megan.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sam?
I mean, how important is it that we do this tonight?
It's not critically important.
Okay. When's our next meeting? In 2 weeks?
The end of January.
End of January?
2 weeks.
So that gives us a couple of weeks to get some more answers for some of this stuff to settle.
I am also going to say that I'm not entirely sure I'm required to have a vote to send that appropriation as
So
chair.
you're just going to do it.
Did we do that last time?
I'm saying,
I don't remember.
I'm
doing
saying
it
in a
last
pinch,
time.
I could probably do it myself. I, of course, think these are important decisions, and I think it's best for all
I
of us.
did it last time, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just.
I
So
definitely-
it doesn't handicap us from asking for it. It's
Okay.
just the process I would prefer to follow would be having a vote.
I
having
definitely
consensus.
trust your expertise, and like if you felt like we needed to do it right now, I'd want to do it right now, but.
I don't think.
I think it's better to be really thoughtful about how we ask for $750 million. Yeah.
I just want to make sure it's enough.
Yeah.
I'm just a little concerned that it's a little.
We looked at the numbers, and I feel confident that we're where we need to be to make it through the school year.
Yeah.
Given the pattern we have, what's encumbered, like we're not, but.
It might mean beefing up the ask for FY26.
That's the other thing I'm thinking too, yeah.
And so weighing those two things together.
Yeah.
But we kind of need to put in the appropriation before we get super concrete. It's a bit of this is like everything else we do, right? This is negotiating a contract while, it's everything is asked backwards.
That contributes to the gap.
Right, all of it does.
Yes, by the way.
All of it does.
Can we, at some point too, can we get like some kind of presentation to the full committee around transportation?
Yes. Yes, that is coming.
Not like, because I feel like whenever we talk about transportation on school committee, like as a school committee body, we're usually talking about the school buses, but this is not the school buses.
No.
This is
It's partly
the
that.
Minto transportation,
This is
and this is special ed. out of
foster care and
district.
homeless transportation and van pool. Van pool was already killing us. It was $750,000 last year. It's $860 this year.
Yeah, like this is that type of transportation is really not. It's really bad for our budget.
And we're in the beginning stages of talking about, and this is part of what we would present to city council is we have kind of a tripod of increasing revenue streams. We are getting, the cart is like miles ahead of the horse now, but the public should know we are working, so this isn't going to be a problem every single year, but it will take us an investment in maybe 2 or 3 years.
Well, and also like legislative action, to be honest.
That would be helpful too.
I don't know.
But assuming that doesn't happen, we're creating other plans to try to alleviate.
Yeah.
And thinking about what we've talked about a lot on this committee, which is how do we reduce the need for a van pool by having monitors on buses and making.
Right, but that's not even the transportation that's killing us in the budget.
It's part of it.
It's part of it
in
general, yeah.
So actually, so that's the other thing too, is I would also like to separate out, like, how would we, because you have to, if you're talking about like students who have transportation as part of their IEP, you have to make that decision student by student.
Yep.
You can't just say, our program is now everybody gets on the bus.
Of course.
I'd want to I definitely want to talk about this in public so that we can get some public buy-in as well and some feedback.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of, we are very generous with our accessible transportation, which is great. And I would love to look at ways that we can make the buses a little more universally accessible
Can
for
we make
kids
a
who
note to
need them.
extend, as we start doing our breakdown finance meetings, there will be, we kind of go by cost centers.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure you get an invitation to that meeting.
Yeah. I think for a while it was probably more cost effective for us to just use Vanpool because we probably didn't have as many students who got special transportation. And, maybe now it's.
They're the only game, it's a monopoly.
But I'm just thinking about like that versus making our school buses more accessible by having monitors and maybe smaller buses, so kind of, but I'd just be curious to see kind of how we would even go about doing that in a single school year, so.
It would be over.
There are a lot of things that we sort of touched upon that spend the next couple of years. Really, it's important that we work on.
The problem is that it's like a chicken and egg thing where like I can't figure out a way to save money on those things without costing more money initially,
So one of the issues is that we have students who need programs that we could have in district or that we could share with another district. And we have to, at this point, send them out but developing those programs.
It's an upfront cost.
Right, which means like you have to develop the program, have the program available, make sure that it's effective for the students, but also they need to be educated at the same time in their previous placement. And so that's a tall order. That's like,
Okay, I gotta rein this.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize.
lot of pieces
This is
to this.
really
there's just, yeah,
important. Yes.
it's really a quandary, and I just want to make sure we're asking for enough money.
Yeah.
And we may not be, so we are gonna note it, and I think I heard what Ben said too, so we're gonna table this and put it back on for the
Yeah.
28th. Okay, great. So we are gonna move to action items, Megan.
Okay, I'm gonna switch screens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Did you also already do the CES update?
I did, yes, while you were having.
My eyes were leaking, okay. All right, here we go. Let me just note the time for our minutes here. Okay, a motion to approve the school payroll dated 12/12/2024 in the amount of $625,739.27.
Need a second?
Second.
Sam, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, Eric. Motion carries, excuse me.
Motion to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated 12/12/2024 in the amount of $692,130.42.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, Eric.
Motion to
carries.
approve the school payroll dated 12/26/2024 in the amount of $653,064.18.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, Eric. Motion carries.
Motion to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated 12/26/2024 in the amount of $343,408.69.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
I was about to say aye. You did. It's fine. I felt it. The motion carries.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2024 superintendent interview meeting. Those minutes are in your packet.
Yep.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the December 11th, 2024 superintendent interview meeting.
All.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the December 10th, 2024 superintendent interview meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the November 12th, 2024 regular meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the September 10th, 2024 regular meeting with the stipulation to withhold executive session minutes until matters are resolved, reviewed, and released by the chairperson.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the minutes of the July 9th, 2024 regular meeting with the stipulation to withhold executive session minutes until matters are resolved, reviewed, and released by the chairperson.
Second.
I've sworn we already approved that meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We have laid out we did set our calendar for this year. I am not going to bore the public with the dates from now through December because I can't even process everything that will happen between now and then. Our next meeting will be January 28th, 2025, 2 weeks from now. And then we will lay out at that time kind of what to look for in February and March. The majority of it will be budget discussions, but also kind of the beginning of the integration as we have another in and out situation. And I can't even cope with that tonight. We'll talk about that some other time. All right, so January 28th is our next meeting, and we are cruising into budget season. I would love to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sam. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.